Hi, this is Carrie Schell from On Point Quilter. A couple of weeks ago, I shared with you how I drafted the pickle dish variation block. This week, I would like to share with you my thoughts on how to create the setting using Electric Quilt 7. Okay, now that we've created our block for our quilt, I need to create a setting for that block. And I want to put a series of these blocks together and then put sashing between each grouping of 4 blocks. Now, I came up with a couple ways to do that, and I'm going to share both of them with you in this week's video tutorial. So I'm going to start with the first one, and that is to go to Work on Quilt. And I am going to do a quilt, new quilt, and I'm going to do custom set. Now, I could sit and figure out what my layout needs to be. At this point, it's 48 by 48. I'm just going to start with that, and I will adjust once I figure out what the actual size is. So for this, I am going to go ahead and delete the borders for now, so I just have the square to work with. And I'm going to go to layer 1. Now, under More Quilt Work Table Options, I'm going to click on that, and I want to make a couple of changes to my settings. So I'm going to go, first of all, when I set my blocks, I know that I want my block to be 8 inches, so I'm just going to go ahead and say use this size and change it to 8 inches. And then under the settings, I'm also going to go to my snap settings, and I'm going to have 4-inch sashing, and I have 8-inch blocks. I'm going to go ahead and snap my block position to my grid, and I'm going to change that to every 4 inches. And that's going to make this very easy when I go ahead and put all of the blocks in. So I'm going to say OK for that as well. And now I'm going to do set block. I'm going to go to my block that I just drafted, and I'm going to drag it on the workspace. And if I use the adjust tool and select my block, notice that it came in at 8 by 8. So I'm just going to put it in that top corner. And I am going to clone and paste it. So that's Control C plus then the Control V. And I want to rotate that. So I'm going to use the rotate block, do a rotation, select the adjust, select the block, and then move it in place. And notice now that it snaps right next to it. You can see the upper left corner is 8 and 0. And I can again Control C, Control V, rotate again, adjust, move in place. And I'll do one last one like that. Rotate, adjust tool, and move in place. Now for my sashing, I'm going to set block, but I'm going to select the drop down box in the corner there, and I am going to add a plain block. And now I can drag that plain block. It's going to come in at 8 by 8. But I'm going to use the adjust tool, move it to the corner, and I want to change that to 4 inches wide. And so I'm just going to, and it's not snapping very nicely. I mean, it's doing 4.1 by 16. Now, if I had said snap block size to grid, so let me just try that. Now, as I move it, notice that it basically snaps to a 4-inch increment. So very easy to work with. Okay, so now I've got that in there. Let me just re-snap it so it snaps in place at that 16 and 0. Now I'm going to, I've got the adjust tool, I'm going to select everything, right? I drew a box around it, and I'm going to copy and paste that. And I'm going to move that in place. Now, it's not going to snap groupings very well. So what I find is that it's helpful to then just go and pick up each of these items and just move it a little away and move it back in place, and then everything will work. And now I'm going to select the 4 items again and copy and paste. And again, I'm going to snap each of these in place. And now I can see that I'm outside of my workspace here. But I can use my ruler, and I'm going to see what that workspace is. And it's basically 56 inches. So I really wanted my layout to be 56 by 56. Now I'm going to change that, but before I do that, I'm going back to more quilt work table options, and I'm going to go into my layout options for all styles, and I want to make sure don't resize contents of layer when resizing quilts is checked. So that you definitely want to make sure that check is on. I'm going to do OK. Go to the layout, and now I'm going to say 56 by 56. And go back to layer 1, and now everything is going to fit. I'm going to go ahead and set block, and I'm going to add now my sashing row here. So I pulled in the block, and I'm going to just expand it and change that size, and it's 56 by 4, so that looks great. And now all I need to do is finish the next 2 rows here by copy and pasting. Okay, now what I'm going to do is add borders. So I'm going to go to the border tab, and the first thing I'm going to do is select add, do a long horizontal, and I want this to be 2 inches all the way around. So I'm going to make sure all is checked, change it to 2, and select the slider bar below left. And then I want to add a series of diamonds just on the top and the bottom. So I'm going to add another border, and for this one I'm going to turn off the all button. I'm going to select the border style blocks, and I am going to make the blocks, I'm trying to think if they were, I think they were 3 inches, but I don't want any on the left and the right. So I'm going to move the left to 0, and the top I'm going to change to 3 inches and click on that. And I want horizontally 30 blocks. And so that changed the top and the bottom to be 30 blocks. And when I looked at this, I realized I actually want this to be 4. So I'm going to change that to 4. And now I am going to create a diamond block. So I'm going to go to my Work on Block tab. I'm going to do a block, new block, easy draw block. Now I could go ahead and change this to the size, but frankly, if I just do a square within a square, and just make sure you only have snap to grid on, and that it's going to, be an even number, so it's going to hit those midpoints. And I can go ahead and color that block. And now when I go back to work on my quilt, I can go to layer 1. I can select my set block, find that one, and I'm just going to do a control key, and it's going to fill all of the spaces. And so all I need to do now is color. I could go ahead and add my binding. Maybe I'll go ahead and do that. Add a third one, make it a long horizontal. All one, I'm going to make that a 1/4 inch. And I've got that. And now I can go ahead and finish coloring my quilt. And once I've colored my quilt, I'm going to fit to work table, and I can go ahead and add this to the sketchbook. Now, after I did this in custom set, I actually realized I could have done that using a regular horizontal setting. And so I'm going to share that really quickly with you as well. But I'm going to start by creating the block, which is the series of the 4 blocks together. And so I'm going to start by selecting Work on Block, and I'm going to do a block Serendipity, and I am going to do the shrink and flip block. And so I'm going to find my single block here, and literally if I use that first setting there, it will rotate the blocks so they all come together, and I'm going to add that to the sketchbook and close. And now when I go to work on quilt, I can do a quilt, new quilt, horizontal. I'm going to make that a layout 3 by 3. I am going to make it 16 inches for the block. And I am going to put the sashing, horizontal and vertical, width and height, both at 4 inches. Now, it does put this setting square in there when I do that, but I can either put the plain block on top or just sort of live with that. But it, again, very quickly can use that to basically just do a control, fill that in, color, and add borders like we did in the last quilt. And so that's just another option for quickly putting that together. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this reproduction antique quilt as much as I did. If you would like to see additional tips and techniques on using Electric Quilt, please subscribe to my weekly newsletter at www.onpointquilter.com.